I'm honored to have four of these distinguished, accomplished professionals on the panel, two from the owners, very internationally known companies, and one gentleman on the board from a world-class global engineering company, and Dr. Patwardhan, who is a well-known doctorate consultant for multilateral institutions, including World Bank. So I belong to an EPC company, so I have obviously taken it as a contractor who has committed to deliver it on time. Let me put the context before I, put my questions or seek knowledge from the four distinguished professionals. In EPC context, with all risk and liabilities borne by the EPC contractor, schedules are seen not achievable by the contractor, while owners are seen to be pushing for shorter durations. Obviously, there are two sides to it, and my context is absolutely not about whose duration is right or realistic here. Understandably, owners have their own compelling reasons to take time for FID or award, and once done, they would like to get it done within the fastest time here. Obviously, they want it yesterday. So, also given the buyer's market, we see today EPC companies and the competitive landscape and the desperateness for the jobs, also facilitating buyers' strong position. Not only EPCs have been financially ruined with onerous T's and C's, also owners are hurt with their projects getting into beneficial operations much later than originally intended, sometimes several years, as we continue to read in public domain. These delays are many times, despite all efforts and sincerity from all involved, we see increasingly contractor companies moving away from EPC business. Most critical, reputation of all parties and individuals involved also gets impacted. We also invariably get to see post-award incredible amount of efforts, time, and cost being spent on claims, counterclaims, even acrimonious communication, hiring of lawyers, etc. Perhaps it is the lawyers and the like who makes money and gets assured in this game. Perhaps we could be better off spending our efforts and costs and focus in an atmosphere of trust, partnership, approach for a shared future. To put it very briefly, what we are trying to do in this session is we are trying to seek solution for what we could say aligning or converging owners' aspirations with possibilities by contractors. The overriding question is what could we see as options to bring about a beneficial transformation in our approach that could get owners and contractors converge on this vexing problem of time schedules. With this, I will approach the panel. I really didn't have much time to introduce the panel. Of course, Mitra did, but to get a brief introduction of each of these, professionals here, let me start with Dinesh. He is on the board of Worley India, and a very accomplished professional. He looks after the Worley's business across 7 countries and uh, close to 8,500 strong workforce across 20 offices in 7 countries. He has completed his executive education in the Columbia Business School, USA. Now he's on the board of Worley India, and his previous, positions have been in leadership roles in Acker Solutions and DuPont are worth highlighting. On Sunit Prakash, he is a passionate practitioner of project management with 35 years of experience, currently with Grasim Chemicals, in charge of execution of projects both in India and abroad. He has been involved with Niti Aayog think tank and PMI Global Executive Council. Shailesh, he is a chartered accountant, interestingly, but he has been involved in the project management, in a way, project awarding and procurement function of HPCL Metal Refinery here. And his previous experience includes in Ellen Metal Group in Indonesia and Germany. Dr. Ajit Patwardhan is a consultant and corporate trainer for infrastructure projects. He finished his graduation in the year I was born, so I am very mindful of it now. He is a mechanical engineering with MTech from IIT Bombay with advanced machine design here, doctorate in the field of risk management and infrastructure development from University of Pune, in addition to diploma in financial management from University of Mumbai. He's a consultant and contract management expert to international institutions such as the World Bank. So with this introduction, let me start the question to Dinesh. Dinesh, in an EPC scenario, which is most likely the situation in the large hydrocarbon projects in India, you from a well-known engineering services provider as well as a PMC with involvement in the project much prior to an EPC bidding process, what do you see as options to get an alignment on execution timelines much before the issue of formal ITT to an EPC bidder?
Thank you, Shankaran. I think, and thank you for inviting me. I think I can look at this as two parts of the issue. And I really enjoyed the earlier sessions because many of our questions actually answered there. If you really attend the sessions, we attend the session for last so many days. I think we all have the answers. But just to briefly summarize the challenges what the EPC contractors are facing, there are two parts, right? What can we do to influence our customers, first, and then what can we as EPC contractors and our partners, can do during the execution. So I think influencing customers on the schedule, I think the topic is that. So what I can say is that we do a lot of work with them early during the feasibility study. We do not have much challenges mostly on a private, customers because they do understand and they do follow a good process of validation of schedules at every stage of the project. So it really helps them to get an input from the third party, as well as from people like us who can, giving them the background of how the things are being done. And then those inputs goes into the, EPC contracts, and it helps them to, engage with the EPC contractor earlier also, and then we can execute it well. But the challenges comes, I know when Shankaran talked about, and he's smiling all the time, it goes into the government contracts, okay, where you go back to them, ask for deviation, the answer comes from the PMC, probably that's why he's saying follow ITB. I think you heard that in earlier calls, And we try our best to, to take legal opinion, many things, but it doesn't help, right? And because all the companies, organizations, government organizations, build their business cases and try, not to go and make any changes because it has impact. They have to go to the board and it delays the entire, the process, right? So how can we help to influence them? And I think one of the ways to do that is work with them very early. In the feasibility study, we try to provide the right inputs to them, give them the confidence about the data, what we provide, and clarify based on what kind of the scope, what we need to deliver, the schedules have been made that way. But we as PMC need to do that much more than what we are doing and continue to build that confidence with the customer. I would also like to add, especially in the government contracts, where what can we do and include the new ways of working. Because the government contracts or the people working in those groups sometimes don't have the entire information about better ways of delivering. Because there was a case recently, I would say, in one of our big contracts where they used the word, we need to implement 4D and 5D in the entire contract. All the bidders have tried their best to remove that clause as a part deviation because they didn't want to get into those type of new ways of working because actually that actually helps you to build efficiency and helps you to deliver it in a better way. So continue on how advising on the latest tools which are available, new ways of working, requiring how to educate the customers on smart tools and gain confidence to build into the ITB. It's going to be very important for us. And the second part is what can we do as partners and EPC to build on the schedule? You heard about many of our friends talking about the digital project delivery. And if you try to use all of that and most of that in the Indian context, many of them have started using it. but it should be the new norm for us going forward. If you start doing those new norms, I think the advanced work packaging we talked about, digitizing the process in procurement, construction tools, what we're using, less labor intensity, all those kind of stuff. What we use, I think it is really going to help us, to have a better solution for schedule. Shankar?
Definitely, Dinesh. I think probably EPCs do find PMCs like yours trying to, perhaps I could say, sympathize with the EPC bidders in at least in clarifying some of the tricky questions. Definitely. Thank you, Dinesh. My next question is to Suneet Prakash.
Yeah.
You have been with large contractors outside India and now in charge of implementing projects as the owner. How do you, obviously you have seen both sides of the table. How do you really envisage your owner's role in completing projects on time from your experience? The more importantly, what is your expectation from contractors? How do you see their role in fulfilling in terms of converging? And what do you think, smart solutions that can be leveraged to ensure better tracking and timely completion of projects?
Yeah, Shankar, good evening, and also hello to my fellow panelists. It's good to catch up. That's a very interesting question. And having worked on both sides of the table, from a consultancy and contracting environment to the owner environment where I'm working for the past 8 years now, I have a fairly, I would say, a good view of the entire project cycle. So let me put it this way, Shankar. I think the problem with the scheduling starts very early on in the project. So there are two parts to it. One is the part where the schedule is sort of created. And the second part, which I'll come to later, is when the schedule is in danger or it has to be maintained. So the creation of schedule, as Dinesh rightly said, I think sometimes we owners, like for instance, in our group, we have stage gate system, and any project which is finally sanctioned for execution passes through several gates, and we do this FEL 1, 2, and 3. I think sometimes what happens is when we are conceptualizing a project, in order to make it attractive, some timelines are assumed which may not be realistic, because obviously it boosts the IRR and so on and so forth. Sometimes it happens, and I don't fault the owners for that, because they have to make viable projects. Otherwise, they're putting a lot of money and then it just goes up. But what happens is that this slightly unrealistic schedule, which has been created in the beginning in the FEL1 or something, that keeps getting moved from FEL1, 2, 3 into the final execution and delivery. I have rarely seen a project where during the conceptualization, the schedule was X months, and then later on it became X plus delta X. It rarely happens. So we have to be realistic. And I think in order to be realistic, I think we should benchmark the project schedule, both domestic as well as global. Now, there are companies to do that. You can engage the companies. I don't want to name them. But we know that in India, comparable projects take longer for several reasons, which I'll not go into the details. But it is good to benchmark the projects. And you can do it globally also. But then apply that factor when you are doing the project in it. So that will give you a realistic schedule.
Thank you. Yep. Okay. Go ahead, please, Sunit.
The other thing is the protection of schedule, and just that is the second part of your question. And what do we expect from the contractors? I think the contractors, when they take the EPC contract in India, Shankar, we are all veterans here, all five of us. We've seen that engineering and procurement is rarely a problem. The main problem happens during the construction stage.
True.
And it is because of various reasons, because of the demography, because of the type of people who work in construction are actually doing a part-time job, and then they are required to be there in the native for the crops and so on and so forth. What I'm trying to say is that This is where the contractors have to raise their standards, because things really go out of control. They take projects on a very low margin. We know that as owners, we squeeze them, and then they subcontract the construction to companies which are not at all dependable. And then things start going haywire. So I think that is one stage where we have to be really very careful and both work as a team. Maybe some incentivization or something can be of help there. Yeah. And the last thing is the smart solutions. Just give me 2 minutes, then I'll wind up. Is of course the smart solutions, and this is the topic of our discussion. Is something that the word smart has of course been used a lot in the past few years. But the thing is that yes, smart solutions, yes. How to integrate it right from the beginning and not at a later stage. How to use dynamic dashboards. How to revise the baseline as not a static document. How to use drones to have a accurate measure of progress and how to take remedial actions. I mean, that's a separate topic in itself, but yeah, there are ways to do that. Yeah. Yeah, Shankar.
Oh, thank you, Sunit. It's quite a valuable insight, and definitely, I can understand the private owners, in charge of implementing large projects. Definitely take a very practical approach. From my own experience, in managing projects for very reputed clients. It's quite a valuable insight, Sunit. Now I'll going to seek what Shailesh Patwa is going to say about it, because he comes from a very close to the money. Obviously he's a finance professional, so he may have a completely perhaps a different view here. My question to Shailesh is, even though you are a non-technical or non-engineering background, apologies, I'm not anything disparaging here. Sometimes financial people are more knowledgeable about managing an EPC project. How do you see from your perspective? Owners can make a very supportive or enabling role instead of a very penalizing approach here, which can affect the entire supply chain. It's not just the EPC contractors. We saw Bhaskar Patel talking about EPCs getting in the middle between the client and the entire supply chain. In fact, 90% of the capex or a contract value, however we look at it, is controlled by the supply chain and the field construction. So what do you think, owners can make a very supportive or enabling role, and what is you think you should expect from a contractor side, to make it success?
Yes, thanks, Sankaran, and thanks to Comitec for having this session. And good morning, good evening. I think there are people from across the globe joining this conference. And Dr. Achit Patwardhan, in fact, I have attended his one of the seminar workshop sometime back. So good evening to Dr. Patwardhan, Sunit, and Dinesh as well. So looking at the topic of the panel discussion and also the question, Shankar, you have asked me, I would like to say that the topic says that how to resolve the conflict. What are the smart solutions? But as we heard in our previous session prior to our panel discussion, Mr. Ranjit Kumar, I think, he was saying better to how to avoid the conflict. That is the best thing. How to prevention is better than cure. So to avoid these things, no, we have to do a lot of things. And I will come to your question also, Sankaran. So as Dinesh has told that there is an immense need of having detailed discussion before bidding process, before the even RFQ, before even pre-bid, whatever. So those will help definitely. Then better understanding of terms and conditions. As Ranjit Kumar was also suggesting, that the way we structure the terms conditions, it's always good to have very good understanding of that, and they should be reasonable as well. Whether it is timelines, whether it is payment terms, whether it is dispute resolution mechanism, so many things. So if you say, let's take example of timelines. yes, they have to be practical, and owner also has to support the way it is possible from owner side, to the extent possible from their side. At the same time, contractor has to also see that it is equally important for him to deliver on those timelines, because ultimately it is win-win for both the sides. If you are able to achieve a better timeline, for a contractor you have to spend less, and for owner you start generating the revenue early. So it is a win-win. Now coming to payment terms, we are private sector and we do see that there has to be a reasonable cash flow to the contractor, and we do maintain that. Now, if you look at the other side also, contractor has to also reciprocate. It is not that owner will only give a better cash flow and you will fully depend on that. Contractor has to also put in the sufficient working money or whatever required resources, timeliness of all that is also important. So that is a part of contractor side. Third thing is, I was taking example of dispute resolution mechanism. So there also we have to have enough provisions for going before the arbitration. There are a lot of escalation metrics can be there, empowered people can be there who can internally discuss and resolve the things. Another thing comes to my mind that as a true partner, whether it is owner, PMC, or the contractor, once the contract is given, they should act as a single team. All regular interaction, regular reviews, regular meetings, even whatever happens to the claim or disputes, those should be taken care of at the earliest possible time so that they don't have impact on the timelines and other deliverables from the contractor. So those are the things, like all those people should also look at this thing, that it is a delivery of not a project, it is a plant which is supposed to produce certain amount of item at certain specifications, and uninterrupted plant has to be there for the lifetime, which owner is investing so much of money. So those things has to be seen in that perspective, not just as a delivering one of the project. And then, so with those intent, if somebody works, I'm sure things will be better, and disputes will be less and less. So I think I will close here.
Thank you. I think definitely. I think your position about making. I would put it this way: encouraging cash flow is definitely perhaps music to the EPC contractors and other people here. Because at the end of the day, the owners have to make the payment. Which contractors are entitled, irrespective of the model. Now, what happens here is that when you backload the payment terms, one day you have to pay. So the money, at least it can help the contractor, because in what we see in currently in lump sum turnkey projects, in the Indian context, contractors are nearly, financing the project execution duration, which I don't think it's realistic to assume, because it affects the entire supply chain. Going back, and if I may link some of the presentations made by other speakers, at the end, contractors need to be supported as well. Now, we are not, I don't think contractors are asking for a full payment at the day one, but definitely an encouraging cash flow will go a long way to allay the difficulties today what the entire supply chain in India is facing. Now, the entire supply chain doesn't get the financing from the financial institutions. So it at the end, the owners are the ones who are getting affected, and you don't have many EPC contractors today in India willing to take the risk. So it's easy to perhaps to say that you need to ensure everything correct, ensure everything is understood, but it doesn't happen. At the end of the day, people are desperate for the business. But with this, I take it to Dr. Patwardhan, very experienced, and obviously, probably he does not have the constraints and the fetters that all of us have it. He can be more open about it. We heard the three specialist people talk about it from owner side, from the engineering and the PMC. With your vast experience, Doctor, and currently, obviously, you are now a neutral person, outside observer, I could say here, and also sort as independent consultant to large, large multilateral institutions like the World Bank. I would really, request to put your thoughts that would help both EPC and contractors, to complete projects on time. And how do you really, get this both all the parties aligned here?
Thank you very much. Good evening to all, and my co-panelist, esteemed co-panelist, and of course the anchor, wonderful anchor of this program. He referred to my association with World Bank and so on. Let me bring that reference into the discussion. World Bank taught me some simple things. First is the facts. What is the factual situation on the ground? Whether you are talking about a particular state or India or South Asia. Last week only, we were talking about the effect of COVID-19 on various projects and what would come back to World Bank because of issues emerging out of that. So my first training is to look for facts. The facts are harsh, but without looking at that, we cannot make good progress. So if you just look at the ministry's report in May 2020, which is not very old, it tells you that there are more than certain numbers like 1863. There's a big presentation, but I don't think we have time. But I'll catch up the key numbers. Suppose approaching 2,000 projects over 150 crore are in execution in India. Their total value is 20.65 lakh crore, called trillion, right? As of then, that day, their cost overrun was 24.75 trillion. That means the cost overrun was 19.85% already on that day. Then about the delays, because our present reference is to delays. Delay also shows a terrible numbers again. Out of the so many projects, 1698 projects, 600 are clearly behind schedule. Say 30% of them are 12 months behind schedule, 21% 24 months, 26% up to 60 months, and last 20% over 61 months. So our delay dilemma is huge. And these harsh facts makes you think what is to be done. Now, one of the things that comes to my mind is some of the questions are not smart questions. They are stupid questions that we could have, managed them way back and way earlier. But anyway, they remain on the table and we need to address them. So how do we look at them? As usual, we look at all the parameters. One of the things we look at is what employer can do to change it. The other thing we look at is what contractor can do to change it. And what about those issues beyond the control of both the parties? What can be the protocol? What can be the appropriate provisions in the contract and so on? World Bank has been working on this for more than 10 years. And in recent years, they have adopted very fine-tuned and improved version of contract model. And whenever they offer funding, they offer sovereign funding to all countries. They have a huge portfolio. So one simple thing they say is, you must use a balanced contract, without which we will not continue the funding. The model is given by them to others. And that model is primarily based on FIDIC version, but with some field improvements related to each country. And then that model has to be adopted by the government or public body which receives the funding or is supposed to receive the funding. Because that solves some of the problems, if not all of the problems. Because it is a fact of the life that apart from funded projects, I see the other projects also. And even this afternoon, I was in another webinar where I was asked only 49 questions to be answered in 100 minutes. So 2 minutes for each question. Anyway, so what I'm trying to drive at is these issues which are very obvious because of World Bank Association. We are trying to fix it in a good model where funding is granted. But there are many, many projects beyond the so-called World Bank funding or Asian development and other funding. So what about the contract models there? The quick answer is those models remain protective of employers. And it is quite instinctive that employer will write a protective contract. I mean, we are not terribly upset about it. Question is, are you making clear what are the risks and those risks go to whom? Because we always say to contractors that, look, don't cry about unbalanced contracts. Don't cry that all the risks are transferred to you. Did you not read the contract? So transferring the risk to a contractor is not a big crime. What has been happening is that these transfer has been of a nature which contractor anyway cannot manage. So the second principle, which is there globally, is transfer the risk to someone who can manage it, who can at least better manage it between the two parties. Now that principle is foregone, and a very protective contract for employer is written. I'm talking about public body contracts. I've seen private clients being much more practical, much more efficient, much more understanding of contractor situation. Anyway, so this is the first part, is the excessively protective contract created by the employer, and no easy way to come out of that. Second is the time they take to respond to various issues raised by the contractor. We have seen non-response ratio, etc. We have worked out in World Bank. At least 60 to 70% of the contractors' letters are not answered. Only 30% are answered. And the contractor is left to himself to fend for whatever is happening. They say we will take a view of it in due course. So no formal answer. So which again makes things difficult as you roll further. Then there is another tendency, is the PMCs, which work for the many public body contracts. My strong exposure to a lot of public body contracts. They tend to protect the employer more than what is called more loyal than the king. So in that fashion, they look at the projects. It's not reflection on anybody personally. They're all fact-based, statistics-based things. And in the process, they are not the agencies which globally expected to be. They are supposed to be matured, balanced advisors, not only to the contractor, but to the client also. That is why there is a role for independent role and determination in case of some problems, etc. So, sorry, that is foregone. So some simple, easy spirits and principles which employers should have or can adopt are set aside, are not carried further, and then that contract is to be put across. I'll give you an example. Niti Aayog has come up with a slightly reasonable version of EPC contract to be used in Indian public models. Can you believe it? I was discussing with another public body, I cannot name it, this afternoon only. And what they have done is they have taken Niti Aayog model and nicely written in particular condition that so-and-so clause is deleted. So what purpose has been served when half a dozen important clauses are deleted in the particular conditions? So even the somewhat balanced contract created by Niti Aayog for use in India gets tempered and hampered into a well protected for employer contract. Well, this is the game on the employer side. Then coming to the issues on the beyond both of them, which I will respond first, because today we are going through that. This pandemic has created a very exceptional scenario. I have conducted, you will not believe it, in last 10 months, at least 10 seminars on how to respond to pandemic-related issues and how to overcome at least some of them, if not all of them. And believe me, they are all suffering today. Last 10 months have been a disaster. I have suggested models to them, to the government, to the Niti Aayog, that look at this, even to World Bank, look, take a view on this. And the short sense of that is accept that these problems are not only the contractors, because in force majeure, what do you say? That you will be given time, you will be given without penalty, be happy with it. What about all the idling losses? First is the lockdown losses, then the idling losses, then the drop in productivity, then the establishment cost at the site, and so on. And I'm seeing claims coming to the various public bodies of the order of, you will not believe it, 1 trillion rupees in next 6 months. So that is the gravity of time-related losses, which are being faced by various contractors. So this pandemic was an immediate example. That's why I had to focus on that. But there are many such beyond the control of party type of issues. You can tell me moment you think that the time is up, and I will I will stop there.
Thank you. Thank you, Doctor. Definitely, I think this pandemic has thrown a lot of things. Definitely contractors have borne the brunt here, as what Suneet was also talking about. It construction is the unknown, uncertainty. But what's also important from what you said was, the risks are better, left to the guy who can manage it better or mitigate it better. That's where but of course, we are where we are in the realistic world now. Obviously, yes, the private clients are definitely more flexible and I would say more practical in the approach.
They are.
And some of the the what you call the positions that what Suneet or Sailesh talked about, the cash flow or proper planning, and benchmarking the schedules. Obviously, it will go a long way. At the end of the day, the owners also don't want the projects to be delayed and wants to benchmark their, the financial, analysis based on a proper, timeline when the plans or the facilities is going to be put into a beneficial operation. So thank you very much, all of you. It is for your time. We are nearly, even though we started late, we are nearly complete. Let me make a few closing statements here. This has been a very engaging and illuminating session here. Sincere thanks to the panel members. Obviously, we are not going to find solutions or miracles in this 1 hour. We need to continue to be engaged, exchanging and deliberating thoughts, how to improve the efficiency, the speed of delivery, whether as owners or as service providers, without hurting any side. Service providers definitely need to be supported, and a penalizing approach not only hurts the EPC, but the entire supply chain, and eventually it does not benefit the owners. I think this is a message what I think, I thought I should do that. At the same time, EPC and the entire supply chain, once committed, I think need to demonstrate the reliability and the commitment to deliver what they promise. I think it is their reputation here. As I expressed in one of the other panel yesterday, EPC is all about people, people, people on all sides, whether as owners, contractors, or suppliers. So it's only the passion, the drive, the dedication of the people, and the urge to excel alone will deliver stretch targets within aspirational timelines with safety of people, assets, and quality of delivery not compromised in any manner. Well, this is where accomplishments meet aspirations. Perhaps,
can we have a quick couple of questions, sir?
Yeah, no, sure, Mitra. I think just let me close it in 2 minutes. And possibly what I wanted to say is, we will maybe try to find a solution with all the digitalization, something like it. I don't know if you're able to see the screen here. Okay, so so the point as well, we are at 8 p.m. now, and people must be looking forward to their weekends, or probably desperate to go back to their offices, having spent a lot of time in their homes now. So any questions, I leave the stage to Mitra now for questions to me or to the panel members.
This is to the panel from Mr. Rupesh Anand from Aarti Industries. With a new perspective in schedule issues, can we ask the bidders to submit bids for defined work with input of cost and schedule as well? Anyone can take it.
I'm not sure about what he means by input of cost and but I think that is already factored, isn't it? When you are making a bid, is it not factored into that?
Yeah, I think maybe I can add, if he is saying that, if I understand the question correctly, that he can deliver to you, 1 month in advance, and probably it will cost a little bit more. Okay, and something like that could be a proposal which they can give, which will help them to make a decision, right?
Bonus and incentive.
Yeah.
Well, that is Well, in private sector, we always, I mean, we are open to giving incentives, but not for each and every contract. I mean, if that part is completed and we can realize the whole thing earlier, then it would be open to incentives. So if it is a EPC contract for a certain part of the plant, then yes, by all means. But if it is just a tiny portion somewhere, then probably it won't click.
Can we have one more question, please?
Sure.
This is for Dr. Ajit Patwardhan from Dibyendu Chakravarti Vardi. You put very logically that risk can be shared to someone who can manage. How can this criteria be determined during the pre-bid stage?
Well, in pre-bid, this issue cannot be tackled at last minute because the very structure of the contract itself has to respond to these assessment. And by now, such analysis is available that which type of risk, who can manage best. If you are just willing to apply those norms, which are now globally available in good contract models, the issue is not difficult. But provided parties are willing to take them, because the moment you do that, the certain risks have to be taken by each party. And then that there is a reluctance from employer to take those risks and so on. So that is the only issue.
Well, I would concur, Doctor. I think it's a very valid point. I think this is has to go in when you discussed about making the contract much earlier. Obviously, the best party that is able to manage the risk should be the one, and that's how the wordings in the contract should come actually. But today, what we see the situation is any EPC is an all risk contract. Now, this is where the potential we are setting up the EPCs for failures.
So thank you so much, Sankaranji. Pisurlekar, Dr. Ajit Patwardhan, Mr. Samudra, Sunit Prakash. Thank you so much for joining us late in the evening. We are so happy and delighted that we were worried when we, announced this online event whether we will, be doing justice and the way the kind of delegates and the number of delegates who have joined us and shown interest and the kind of people, from Mr. Subramaniam Sarma to Binara and Sanjay Yoshi, all the EPC leaders were here to discuss. I'm sure there will be lot be opportunities in future. Thank you so much once again and have a good evening.